Bill, when's our next, do we have a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, or do we go to Thursday? Okay. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, if everyone's ready, I'll call this meeting of the Budget Committee, call it in order. And Madam Clerk, would you call to order? Would you take the roll call, please?
Branch.
Here.
Bray.
Here.
Costales.
Here.
Graham.
Present.
Henry. Hussey.
Here.
Mahalovich.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Scrivener. Ward.
And also, I'll let you know that the mayor called this afternoon and explained that he had a conflict with he's looking after family tonight.
And I know Councilmember Ward had another commitment or something. She was going to try to make it as well.
So she
might be a little
joining us
late.
later tonight. Okay, thank you. Mr. Graham?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize one of our colleagues' birthday today and say happy birthday to Councilman Rick Prather. So happy birthday, sir.
Happy birthday, Mr. Prather.
Shall we sing and dance?
All right, a little reminder for everyone. We are live, and the microphones are live, and the cameras are rolling. So be sure to use your microphones. And we will move right on into the committee discussion of budget. Bill, when we visited, are we going to review some insurance costs?
Yes.
And then we will go to the 5-year projections.
Yes, sir. That's the plan.
Is there any particular order you would like to proceed?
Yeah, there is. If it's okay with you, we'd like to go ahead and start with the health insurance. We had literally a phone call from our broker today, which provided changes to some of the information that you've been provided previously. It's good. It's good because the rates went down, at least on one plan where we merged those. Gail can walk through those specifics. What I thought would be helpful, though, is we have our current plan, and you know our current plan premiums went up 18%. One of the options for council, obviously, is to just go ahead and pay all of that 18% and keep the employees' portion of premiums the same, or certainly split those, and the council's, I want to call it the city portion go up and the employee portion go up proportionately. I don't know how palatable that will be for council, so there is an alternative, and that's kind of what we've been talking about in the past, or having some different options. And if it's okay with you, I'd like for Gail to walk through those options, because there are some specifics associated with those. Overall, I would say that those options are less attractive from an overall health insurance point of view than the plan that we have now, but they are they're shifting the cost more to employees. And we talked a little bit about that the last meeting that we had. And so if it's okay, I'll have Gail go through those specifics. I know it's confusing and it's very hard to do in writing, but I think that with the verbal discussion here, we can see this as an alternative.
All right. Go ahead, Gail.
Okay, I'm kind of going to go through this sheet that we just passed out to you.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Sorry. Remember the other day when I was saying that there was going to be a time when we were going to need that fund balance? I didn't know when it was going to come, whether it was going to be a flood or a tornado or something. I just wanted to re-mention that sometime.
The day's coming. All right, Ms. Strope.
Okay. If you look at this sheet, it's going to look somewhat like the sheet that we distributed to you on Monday night. The first column, though, and the sheet that we gave to you Monday night, it actually had our current plan on it. What we have now is listed as option 1, and that is basically almost identical to our current plan. It's a traditional model plan. But it has a $1,500 deductible. Now, our current plan also has a $1,500 deductible, but the city self-insures the second 1,000 of that. So the employees pay the first $500 of the deductible, and then the city, as you know, self-insures the next 1,000. of the $1,500. Okay, this traditional plan has pretty much all the same benefits as our old plan, but it would put the full $1,500 deductible to the employee, and then the co-payments for the prescriptions go up just a little bit. But otherwise, the benefits are the same as far as the cost to go to a primary care physician, things like that. So if you kind of look down the list, you can see where it says office copay, PCP, that's primary care physician, $25. A specialist would be $50. Hospital copays, outpatient would be $0. Inpatient doesn't have a copay because it would go to the deductible. Then it shows the co-payments for the emergency room. The deductible is what I talked about, was $1,500 per person, $3,000 maximum if you have multiple people on the plan. So if it's in a family plan, it would be $3,000 total. Co-insurance would be 90%, which means once the employee pays their deductible of $1,500, they have expenses after that, maybe for an outpatient surgery or some kind of diagnostic tests. They would pay 10% and the insurance would pay 90%. The total out-of-pocket maximum that anybody would have to pay would be $5,000 for an individual or $10,000 for a family. Okay, so you could add all your co-pays, you could add your deductibles, your co-insurance. Once you hit $5,000 for an individual or $10,000 for a family, you wouldn't pay anything. It would be covered then at 100%.
Ms. Drope, are you still in option number
I am. Option number one.
one? What is the total amount that the employee pays of their deductible? Because, you said
On this plan, the employee's deductible would be $1,500
Okay, but did you say the city pays 1,000 of that?
currently. But on this plan for next year,
Yes.
we would not do that.
Okay.
We are proposing eliminating all of the self-insurance next year.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Mr. Scrivener?
Ask a quick question. You said 5 and 10. That's if they are out of network, right? Because
You're
it's
right.
3
I'm
and 6
sorry.
in network.
You're right. Out-of-pocket maximum for in-network would be $3,000, $6,000.
And does that max out-of-pocket include the deductible and co-pays if they have any?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so it would be all expenditures, out-of-pocket expenditures?
All expenditures, yes.
Including drugs?
Yes, including prescriptions. That actually will be including starting January 1st.
Okay.
Anyone else? Proceed.
Okay, so then you can see below that what the premiums would be, the total premiums. Below that, you can see the city's cost would be in the next box. And remember, we have the wellness program where employees can participate. If they choose to participate for employee-only plan or employee and child plan, they would receive an extra $35 paid towards their premium. If they don't participate, they would not get that. So the column for no wellness is where the employee would fall. If they're in an employee and spouse or a family plan, their spouse must also participate in the wellness program, and as long as both adults participate, they would get the $50 incentive. So that's the difference between the wellness and the no wellness. And then you can see the bottom box is the employee's cost on all of those. So then that's example one for the traditional plan, which pretty much mirrors our current plan. Again, I'll say minus the deductible and the prescription copays. Okay? Otherwise, it's identical. Option 2 is FlexPoint. That is the hybrid plan that kind of is, it's a hybrid of a traditional plan with copays and a high deductible plan, in that it essentially gives an employee their first 4 visits are covered with a copayment, and after that, then their visits to an office, doctor's office, would be covered through the deductible. So that's why it's called a hybrid plan. So I won't go through every single step of it, but you can kind of look down through it and see the deductible is $500, so it's lower than the traditional. The out-of-pocket maximum is a little bit higher. It's $4,000. Prescription copays are the same. So you can go down, you can see the cost, $472.48 for the employee only, and then it's broken out for the employees, the city's cost and the employee's cost. And the employee's cost is based on the current rates. and the city's cost falls under the 10% that we have in the budget, increased over what we have this year. Then option number 3 is the Navigate plan, and that is very much like the traditional HMOs that we remember from years ago, where an employee would have to choose a primary care physician. They would need to go through their primary care physician if they wanted to go to a specialist. And it does not include out-of-network benefits. So employees must go to participating providers within the network. The good thing about United Healthcare is that they have an very extensive network, especially in this area and really across the country. So the rates for that you'll see are identical to the FlexPoint. That's one of the things that we got the word on today was matching those rates at a lower rate than what we had proposed to you on Monday night. Then on option 4 that's the health savings account or a high deductible plan. You can see that there is no copayment for an office visit. Everything basically goes to the deductible first, so the employee's deductible would be $2,600. Their out-of-pocket maximum would be $3,600. It does use the extensive network. It does allow for out-of-network benefits, but of course it still goes to the deductible. With this plan, we would be giving within it, because the cost is lower, we would also be putting $68.45 into each person's health savings account each month. And with that, we'd still be spending, the city's cost would still be the same. The way it's set up, the city's cost is the same for all 4 plans, and then employees can choose. So if they go to the option 2 or 3, that's kind of the middle of the range, they could buy up to the traditional plan, which matches our current, or they could actually buy down to the health savings account. So I know that's a lot of information and a lot of numbers and small print.
And technically, the percentage increase of the options really 2, 3, and 4. 2 and 3 is about 6% increase. 4 went down a little bit, but with the health savings. And then the first one was 14%, but that would be the proposal is if we have that option that employees could pay up to that point. So we're to the point where if this alternative that you're wanting to talk some more about, really 2 suggestions. One is you could certainly have the city pick up a portion of that increase and the employee pick up a proportional amount of the increase. Or, since we budgeted 10%, you could have the city pick up just the entire increase, and the employee's portion would remain the same as it is now. And that is, part of the rationale for that would be is because the plans are not as beneficial. You can see that it goes from at least the 2, 3, and 4 options go to the 80-20, and the deductibles go up certainly on the options 3 and 4. So I don't want to make it any more confusing than that, but we'd be below budget, but obviously, well, not obviously, but it's a plan that's not as good as our plan right now, other than with the exception of the option number 1, which if you have the package where it's given like this and employees can choose which plan best meets their need, then they would buy up to that one plan. Stop there, I think.
We'll let this settle in a little bit.
Yeah, it's confusing, and
There's a
certainly we
lot.
can come back. But my main point was that we had anticipated and budgeted 10%. It came in at our current plan at 18%, and we've got it down to essentially a 6% increase. So we're good in that respect. Now the question becomes how to implement it.
Mr. Scrivener?
What's the total cost of a 6% increase? What if we do that? What's that cost? What will that budget number be?
You're trying to figure out the savings between the 10% and the 6%?
Well, I'm just curious what the total.
Yeah.
The 6% would be, well, the difference between the two, actually,
Okay.
6%. The 6% would be about $187,000. And then the 10%
Was it 234?
would be to the 234. Uh-huh.
And as we mentioned previously, it's our understanding that the state didn't increase the employees' portion, nor did the school district increase the employees' portion of health insurance in their system, in their plans.
Do you know how much their pay increases were for the school and the
I don't know.
State.
Do you know, Gail? We know Columbia just did 2%.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the school district's increase was this year on their salaries.
Gail, you say option one most resembles the existing plan? that you
Yes.
played today.
Ralph,
Mr. Hussey?
this is just a broader question too, but how common is it for cities or public entities to also add so much of the premium cost related to the spouse and the children as well in health insurance? I know in some instances, for example, my health insurance, my premium can be covered, but the additional cost of extra family members is solely on the employee. And this is pretty generous. And I don't ask to say cut that. I ask it to say that's another one of those added benefits that can also get lost.
It's actually very common in governmental entities. Most cities do that, and I know the state of Missouri does that.
Do you know, are we in line with the percent that we cover there? I mean, we're making some comparisons to some other public entities about the fact that the state and the school district have picked up the increase. But are we also in line in terms of what the dollar amount cost is and those things as well?
Yeah, I could tell you, actually, I printed off for the state. For the state of Missouri, and this would be those departments that fall under Missouri Consolidated Healthcare Plans, for a family plan, and this is for both the year 2014. Actually, this one's 2015, and I have 2014 is a little bit different. The employees' portion didn't change, but the state's portion did. So for 2015, the state is paying for a family plan with 3 children, $1,532 for their, and that's per month, for their HSA. They're paying $1,578 per month for the PPO 300 plan, which is the PPO plan with the $300 deductible, and they're paying $1,590 a month for the PPO 600 plan. So they're actually contributing considerably more, actually, than what the city is contributing. And those amounts went up a little bit. They last year, well, 2014, the current year, for both the high deductible and the PPO 300, they were paying $1,503, and for the PPO 600, $1,536.
What's the employee portion of that? I mean, that's the cost of.
No, that's just Missouri Consolidated's
Missouri
cost. Yeah,
cost.
and the employee for the high deductible plan is paying $116 a month. For the PPO 300 for the family plan, $457 a month, and for the PPO 600 plan, $351 a month, and that was both 2014 and 15.
Go ahead.
Could we have copies of those?
Absolutely.
Rather than writing them down, I'd like to have an opportunity to see that. And do you know, for beneficiaries, does the state pick up the cost of beneficiaries, or does the employee pick up that, or what percentage?
For dependents?
Dependents.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying on those amounts that I just listed. That was on the family plan.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Up, on option number 1, the employee's cost at the bottom of the sheet, the annual cost, $837,000. What is that?
That would be the cost for the employees to, if you had the same number of employees that we have today with the same plans that we have, that would be their portion of the premiums that they would pay.
So the total of the employees' payments would,
If you take,
I see.
if you look, this box is the city's cost. This box is the employee's cost. If you take the total of the city's cost and the total of the employee's cost, it'll equal the total annual premium.
all right, thank you. Well, why don't we keep this in front of us and we can come back to it later in this meeting tonight. In the meantime, we might go ahead with our second presentation. Mr. Mihalovich?
Before we do leave this topic, let me see if I get one metric right. The 230,300 was put in the budget, was anticipating a 10% increase. And so is that, how's that $230,300 differ than these annual costs that we're seeing? And if that's 10% and we're seeing a 14% increase, then this number here represents the 2,800, or the 2.8 represents 4% higher than what we budgeted. Is that the easy math? Because it's 14% above versus 10% above.
No, the 2.8 is under 10%. It's like about 9.5% actually.
Okay.
Well, 2.8.
So the
is
2.8 million
city's cost all the way
is the
across.
one constant across this entire budget, or these proposals. And you're saying the first line is 9% above current? Or what would you say that is?
Okay, the city's cost, if you look at the city's cost on all of them, so I calculated the city's cost based off of our employees' current contributions, okay? Leaving those the same, subtracting those from the total premiums of the new rates of the FlexPoint and Navigate. And that's how I established what the city would pick up.
So this is the city picking up the increase, all of the increase.
And so using the employees' current contributions, the same, subtracting that from the new premiums, that gives us the city's cost, and that cost is under 10%, which is what we have budgeted. And then I made that amount, the city's contribution, the same for both the traditional plan and the HSA, so that every employee is getting the same amount of money. And they can either buy down or buy up. But regardless of which plan the employee chooses, the city pays the same amount. So some employees don't feel as though, somebody else is getting more money because they chose a different plan or something like that.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions later in the evening, we'll come back to this.
I-
Mr. Scribner?
I need to ask a question here. Gail, I'm not following how you can keep the employee cost the same and then fix the city's cost at a fixed amount whenever the annual cost of the premiums varies.
Well, you'll see
If you haven't changed the employee's cost at all, it would seem to me in order to make the numbers balance, you'd have to, the city's cost would have to vary, because like option 1, for instance, it's $300,000 approximately, not quite, but about $275,000 more than option 2, and yet you didn't change the employee's contribution, or at least I understood you to say you didn't change it from what it was in 2014.
Well, I didn't for the FlexPoint and the Navigate, because
Oh,
those
okay,
are the
just
two middle
those two
plans.
plans.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we based what the city's cost would be off of that. And then for the traditional and the HSA, we left the city's portion the same.
Okay.
And so then therefore the employee either pays more. So if you look at the total employee cost on those other two, that's where the difference is, because their costs are either higher or lower.
Okay, all right. And so those two plans are both going to run 3,540,000. It doesn't matter to the insurance company which one of those two the employees would, or we would select, whoever chooses the plan.
Correct.
And then the last plan is $500,000 less, and the employees will benefit from that $500,000 less.
Well, the health savings account.
Yeah.
Stop there, but
Okay.
I also wanted to, and then we also have the self-insurance piece that is not in any of these now, which is
Which
about
actually offsets some of the increased cost of premium. I mean, that's a benefit to the city.
Right. And then there's a discussion about, is there a possibility of we've had some suggestions from employees about maybe taking that portion of money and including that in the cafeteria plan, so it also helps to offset some of the costs on the employee side, some of the impact to the employee on the employee side. I know. I know.
The idea there is that the employees' out-of-pocket costs are changing a lot based on these plans. So the thought was that money was being spent on health insurance before, continue to spend it in that way so that it would come out of their out-of-pocket costs. The benefit to that would be if we did that, then money that the employees didn't spend would stay with the city. So.
Confusing, I know.
It's a lot of days.
It's a lot of moving parts.
You have an opportunity to, before we finish tonight, we can come back and look at this again to catch up on any questions that occur between now and then. Also, by all means, the questions that you have during the week, you can visit with Mr. Kroll and Ms. Stroh.
And on this one, we do have it for first reading on the 6th.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
on Monday night.
and understanding that, whatever changes you all make will make some, and obviously impact that. So.
All right, so for now, we will move on to the second item on the agenda, which is long-range financial planning by Mr. Betts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheila's going to hand out a couple of documents, just kind of demonstrating the long-range financial plan. So I'll give her a moment to do that, if you don't mind.
Now, this is a new feature, this five-year,
Yes.
and we have it this year because of what?
A couple of reasons, the main one of which we're working on to get in the GFOA budget award. One of the requirements of that is to develop and compose a long-range financial plan. And then the other reason is the city administrator said so.
Well, and you and I have looked at this a few days ago,
Yes,
and it's rather fascinating information.
it is. And I think as I go through it with the council, you'll see that how just making one little tweak to an assumption can change the entire outlook of the document. So obviously we have the long-range financial plan, so it allows the council and staff the opportunity to consider future scenarios so we can look at long-term sustainability. I'd like to make sure that I note, again, that making one change to the plan can alter the outlook, and that's why you have a second single page, and I'll explain what that is here in just a moment. But it'll tell you how just we made one change, and that if you look at the bottom line, it made a huge difference for us. So
Before you,
Yep.
what page should we have in front of us as you?
right now, I'd like you to have the packet in front of you, if you wouldn't mind. So there should be a packet, and then you have a single piece of paper that looks just like the front page of the packet. So I'll explain both documents as we move along here. So my goal is to ask everyone not to jump to conclusions and look at the bottom line. And Drew was making fun of me and saying, "Set your hair on fire," but he realized I didn't have much hair, so he didn't want to do that to me. So my goal is to ask that no one do that. We just kind of talk our way through it. I'll try to explain the best I can all of the small numbers that are here, explain how we came to those, and then explain what we believe is the best option moving forward, or what to use this document for. So on the packet document there, you have a couple different sections. You have a revenue section and you have an expenditure section. Those are the same kind of sections that we use when we're developing our budget. They're at the high level. So on the revenue side, you have sales and use taxes, you have intergovernmental taxes. When we developed our revenues for the budget, those are the same numbers. When you go in and look at expenditures for everybody, there's a personnel services, and that's where you see overtime and salaries and health insurance and all of those types of things. So the same kind of categories along the way. The next line right under the expenditures area there, you see a net increase or decrease to the fund balance. And again, this is where I don't want to jump to conclusions, because one assumption changes the whole ball game. But as you can see there, how those parts are moving across. And then you have a section below that. It's titled Fund Balance, and that's really how we kind of keep track of our fund balance and all the bookkeeping items that go into that. So when you see the reserve for inventory, the reserve for prepaids, that's what those particular items give you. At the very bottom in the last line of the first page there, you see what our fund balance would be, assuming that all the assumptions that we make are right on and we do no management and everything happens the way that we say it is, which I'm certain it won't, but if that were the case, that's how our fund balance would turn out. So that's kind of the first page there, and we'll come back to that in a moment. The second page are the assumptions that we use to come up with the first page. So you have the revenue section there, and it kind of talks about all the different assumptions that we utilized going forward on the revenues and the expenditure side. So you can kind of see those are the assumptions that staff came up with. Certainly we would like to have council's input into some of those assumptions, maybe change some of those types of things. Now the last page, or the third page here, is the model you've heard us talking about multiple times. It's called our capital replacement plan. Obviously, we have more than just one sheet worth of capital items that are floating around the city. We have multiple sheets, but a lot of them aren't part of the general fund, and a lot of them obviously don't need to be replaced in the next 5 years. So, and if you look along the column there, right below where it says funded, you see vehicles, like you see one Suburban SUV listed, 3 4x. So it's not just one item each, it's multiple items. So you can see there's 5 Tahoes and different things like that listed. So it's multiple items, but these are the items that from working with the other departments that they gave us, and they gave us their estimated cost for these items. These are the items over the next 5 years, whether they're vehicles or building type things that will need that they recommend being replaced in that 5-year period there. What you'll see along the way, and if you follow along, and you can see where the column where it's listed 2015, in that column there, 2015, you will see the items that were requested in the current year budget. And the portion there at the top is the amount, the items that were funded. So there's a light-duty Silverado in the police department. That's an animal control vehicle. There's 2 leased motorcycles that are currently in the proposed budget. There's 5 new Tahoes for the police department in the budget. And then there's City Hall. We have multiple HVAC systems, and it's to replace one of those units. We replaced one this year. The plan is to replace another one next year, and that's part of the buildings and grounds portion of the budget that is before you. Below that, you see the unfunded section, and in the unfunded section, you can see there's one Suburban SUV that was in the fire department that was not funded as part of the 2015 but proposed budget. Then there's several public works vehicles. There are 4 of them: F550, the refurbishing of 2 single axle plows, and a sweeper street truck. So that leaves us with a unfunded amount of $428,000 there. So, and as you can move across there and see in 2016, the request, if you stay down there on the total, the request is for $752,228 worth of items out of the general revenue. Plus we carried forward the $428, so that number becomes $1,180,228 if you wanted to know the total combined there. So assuming we were able to fund all of those in 2017, you would have $1,013,000 worth of request. 2018, you'd have $802 worth of request. In 2019, you would have $642,000 worth of requests. So that kind of gives you just a 5-year out plan. We actually have, 2020. I mean, there's multiple years where folks have looked at that, and we will continue. And we've done this for all the funds: wastewater, parking, capital improvement fund, all of those different options. It's very helpful, we believe, to kind of show us where we need to start looking at some funding options, what kind of items that are going to be there. Obviously, each year this will be adjusted based on mileage on vehicles, or if a vehicle's starting to have major maintenance issues, those types of things. So, and the reason I point out the CRP plan to you is if you kind of go back to the first page there, and under expenditures, where you see capital purchases. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The seventh line down under expenditures says capital purchases. If you look out at 2016 and 17 and 18 and 19, those numbers are in here. So they're figured into our overall, how that has an impact on our long-range plan. So now to make even less sense to you, hopefully I'm making some sense. If you take the single sheet, it looks identical to the front page of this plan. And if you look at the bottom number, so in 2019, the bottom number says negative 5.32. And on this plan, the negative number says, or the positive number in 2019 at the very right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, says 3.4. The one assumption that we changed, and so we call this the either ultra-conservative or pessimistic plan, so depends on how you look at it. We call this the just kind of using data that we have on hand. The only thing that we changed was we took the revenues and we took them on their 5-year average. So the 5-year average of our revenues across the board is a 2.3% increase. So that's all we did. We took the revenues and said if we made it 2.3% every year, if they increase 2.3% every year, what impact does that have? Well, I mean, it makes almost a 9% increase in our fund balance. So that's the 5-year average. The 10-year average on our revenues is 3.44% each year over 10 years. So you say, what impact would that have had I showed you the same sheet of paper? It would have made that final right-hand column 14.18%. We went as far back as 15 years just to kind of show you the analysis and things that we looked at. And for 15 years, the yearly average is 4.13%. So, and I point that out because that includes, the tough times of 2001 that our economy faced, 2002, those years, and it includes the 2008 time. So we encapsulated a lot. And so we averaged on our revenues of an increase of 4.13% over that time. If you said if we would have used the same assumption on revenues and put 4.13% in there, it would have made our fund balance in 2019 20.82%. So it would have grown. So that's just making one change to one assumption. We've looked at other cities and how they've done it. Other cities have, they'll be ultra conservative, may I say, on their expenditures, and they'll say their expenditures are only going to grow 0.5% a year, or their expenditures are only going to grow. We did not do that on the expenditure side. We kind of went through and looked at the CPI. We kind of looked at how it trended as far as like in the personnel services category, how that's trended over time. So we've looked at how all of that came into effect. So again, I'm telling you all this information to tell you that when you look at one document, it takes one change to make the document have a totally different impact and feeling there on what you would like to see, or maybe not what you'd like to see, but what you believe is going to be the case or the reality for the next 5 years. So happy to answer any questions if I can.
Mr. Hussey?
Just a couple for you. Bill, on the capital, and this may be a hard thing to do and to calculate, it's probably a lot of guesswork, but I know that by delaying these expenditures on the capital items, there's an increased maintenance cost. But is there any way to calculate to say if we get ourselves on a plan like as presented, that maintenance cost would hold steady or decrease? Because then that's like the savings, but you delay the purchase of, I know, it's hard to do. I understand that, and there's unexpected maintenance costs, but
right.
It seems to me that's the reason and incentive behind being a little more aggressive on replacement, as we know the maintenance cost would come down.
Sure. I would probably defer that question to Mr. Marasher if he would like to try to answer it, but he might have some better input on that, or Britt, either one. So.
Yeah, I think in about '05, that's exactly what was happening. They saw the increase in the CM budget, if you will, the parts budget was getting way out of hand. Yet we had, and the other factor in that, not only does the parts budget grow like that, your preparedness is sacrificed as well. So I know there was a comment when we had the big ice storm here. We had just replaced a bunch of equipment, so we were able to actually respond and do some things. And actually, we got money back from the feds that year because when you have these disasters, many times there's a federal declaration of some kind, you get your money back. So we just tracked our time. We're able to do that internally instead of hiring an outside consultant, send the money away. But it also helps us fight these snows, and we're still living on that equipment plan that was put in place back then, but it's starting to wane now. So we're watching that track. I can't give you the exact amount. We can probably make some estimates, but if you, just like your car, if you start keeping it longer, the maintenance just goes up every year, obviously, and so there is a track to that.
All righty, thank you. Second question, on the change in the percentage of growth, did you just change the bottom number, then you didn't go through each line
Right,
item?
correct. I should have pointed that out. Yeah, we just changed the bottom number there.
So when you looked at like the 10 and 15 year historical things in the revenue growth, did you look exclusively at the total revenue growth, or did you look within some of these line items too to see if there's?
Yeah, actually ran the categories for each of the line items to see, so some will be up, some will be down. We did remove one line item that's not typically on here because of the way we've changed it. Is intergovernmental is a line item that includes grants and things like that, and so it's so variable. So we took that out when we came up with our calculation because it probably would have skewed our calculation to the positive, so we didn't want to put that in there. So we did look at each of the different categories, and again, some were really good to the good, some were really, they had a negative impact. So it just depended on which way you went there. So.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Scrivener?
And I don't know how you calculate it, and I don't know how, quite frankly, I'm familiar with heavy equipment, and I understand that chassis and heavy equipment is built to be rebuilt. I mean, it's built to be maintained. And often the only thing you really gain, and this is not always true, but often the only thing you gain by replacing it is just cosmetic appearance changes. And there has to be some way of calculating either by miles or by daily use or something, a comparison between what the depreciation on a new vehicle is versus the maintenance on an old vehicle. And I know, my background experience is in over-the-road tractor trailers, and I know that there are trucks out there that are 30, 40 years old that have been rebuilt repeatedly, and they're just as functional as a brand new unit going down the road. They don't look as nice. They probably don't ride as well, and maybe the pride of ownership's not there. But there is equipment that is made to be rebuilt and made to be maintained, and I just hope, especially with the very, very high cost of replacement, that we get all the value out of our equipment that we can, because it doesn't seem like that when we finally do get rid of it, we get very much for it. And I'm not trying to manage these departments because I don't really know. I don't know what it takes. I know Matt has given me a tour of the central maintenance facility, and I've seen some of the equipment, and he's pointed out structural things, rust problems with springs and spring hangers and dump bed hinges and things like that. And I understand that those structural things might not be cost effective to replace some of those things and repair those things. And there comes a time whenever the functionality of a piece of equipment is no longer there. But I find it difficult to always feel like that just because something has some time on it, that it is to a point where it costs us more to maintain it than it does to replace it. And I think we need to be very, very careful across the board, whether it's police cars or fire trucks or whatever it is. I think we need to make sure that we're getting our value for what we're spending, because if you look at these lists, we're being expected to spend a great deal.
Yep, and the capital replacement plan is not, the out years aren't approved. It's just an idea of saying, you know, what we got coming. And I also want to point out that under the assumptions, we had salaries at 1%. I don't know how realistic that is. We had health insurance at 10%. So obviously some changes can make a big difference.
Anyone else? Mr. Hudson?
Just one last question. Steve, do you happen to know, or Bill, what a best practice is for a percent of your budget to be spent on capital equipment and such? Is there, not to say that we have to go, but are we low, high, in line?
I don't I don't know of something like that, just because it fluctuates so much depending on what part of the country and the kinds of things, you know, buildings. But I do know it catches up quick. If it's maintenance or replacement, it catches up quick.
Mr. Betts, on this sheet where the assumption is 2.3% growth,
Yes, sir.
on the year for 2015, and I recognize that these are all assumptions. It shows a unrestricted fund balance of $4.9 million.
Correct.
And then, as I look at it, the next year the fund balance is 3.7. In the year 2017, it's down to 2.6, and then 1.8, and then finally, the 5 years out, the fund balance is down to $1.1 million. That's not sustainable, is it?
No, but yeah, I would agree with that statement. It isn't sustainable. I think that's the goal of this document, is to help us to realize that we have some future discussions to have and scenarios to look at. And obviously, each year, like even looking at this budget, as we created the budget, Steve and the mayor, as they develop the budgets that they have, they take into consideration all of those types of things and try to manage the budget so that we don't have the reduction in fund balance.
Using the best information we have, as you've done, that this would suggest that the sooner we start finding new revenue, well, we need new revenue. I mean, it's not it's you know, it's kind of eye-opening to me.
Yes.
It means that we need to be very careful with all of, you know, the funds this year, because we're going to either pay the consequences or enjoy the consequences down the road. You know, the more cautious we are now. Anyone else?
Do you want to say anything? Yeah.
Where?
If you don't mind, I mean, if there's no other question, I mean, I'd just like to, you know, reiterate that it's, you know, this is just a, you know, a projection document. I think at some point, you know, probably isn't tonight, probably isn't during the budget process, that there needs to be further conversation discussing the assumptions, discussing, you know, some of the future scenarios, whether they're revenue, expense items, whatever they might be, with the council, just to kind of, you know, look at those types of things to where we can look at that long-range plan and not just look at 1 year, but we can look out to those 5 years and kind of come up with some different options that might be on the table.
But we need to take the information, the message we need to take seriously.
Absolutely. I would agree 100% with
Yes.
that. Mr. Scrivener has his hand up.
Mr. Scrivener?
I guess I have two observations. And first of all, I want to thank you for putting the work in to put that together, Bill. And I understand it's just a tool.
Yes.
You're not coming to us saying that this is what's going to happen.
Right.
You're saying that this is a way for us to get a glimpse into the future and use that as we consider some of the things we're doing. And I want to make the point, not to support or to reject the idea, but one of the things this tool that you have is not calculated or has not put into the equation is the addition of employees, the addition of it does calculate or anticipate insurance costs, an increased insurance costs, so that would be there. But there aren't new employees or new services or anything like that.
True statement.
Calculated in here. And so, I think as we consider those things, we need to be sure that we consider the impact down the road. Because just because you can afford it one year, if you look at the trend, you may not be able to afford it the third or fourth year out. And then the other thing, it would seem to me, you made the point, Mr. Bray, that we need to find new revenue, and that's absolutely true. That's why we work so hard to try to create incentives for businesses to come to the community and try to be so positive about having visitors come and visit our community, because that does bring about increased revenue. And if we don't find a way to grow our community, then what I think the inevitable situation is that you're going to see more and more, assuming the voters pass the capital improvement sales tax, you're going to see more and more pressure be put on to fund equipment purchases from that tax, with less and less ability to fund roads and bridges and sidewalks and street repairs and things like that. So we have to be very, very careful in everything that we consider about budgets. Sometimes the decisions we make are not going to always be popular, but we have to do the right thing. And I'm not sure how thrilled the public would be if we had to start using that capital improvement sales tax for a large percentage of equipment purchases, as opposed to what we've done with it in the past traditionally.
Good points. Mr. Prather?
I don't know if you'll know this answer, Bill, but do you feel that we have felt the effect fully of the R.L. Donnelly layoffs?
I don't know that I would know the answer to that question. I think so. And just based on the sales tax trends seem to be bouncing back. That happened about a year ago. Things seem to be in the positive for us. So I think we probably have, but that would be just
that
Bill's
being
thought.
said, do you think we're going to have any effect at all from the DST layoffs? Or not layoffs, but I guess them moving.
You know what that? Yeah, I don't know. There's 70 employees. I don't know what the exact number would be there with that, but obviously, in my mind, from the field, from the IT side of things, there's plenty of jobs for those folks to remain, I think, in mid-Missouri, whether they stay in Columbia or Jefferson City and those types of things. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for those folks, but I don't know what DST's plan is for them. So.
Right, thank you.
A reminder, Mr. Mahalovich, did you have anything? Monday we have the public hearing on the budget at a regularly scheduled council meeting. And then this committee will get together again next Thursday on October the 9th, at which time there'll be serious discussion on the parking lot, and we'll probably be getting a pretty good idea where we're going to end up with the budget. Coming back around, are there any questions regarding the long-range plan or the insurance, the health insurance presentation tonight? Anyone have any additional comments there before we perhaps wrap up tonight's meeting?
Can I give just a real quick overview of the parking lot, just so everyone knows where we stand? Would that be
Certainly,
okay?
yes, thank you.
I know it's probably tough to read, and I can obviously email this to the council as well, and certainly would be happy to. But if you look at the green area there, right now we're looking at a negative $169,178.61 from having a balanced budget. We did go ahead. I don't believe there's been a motion yet. We put it on there under the assumption that someone might make the motion of putting the finance director IT reorg savings on there. So that money is included in there. You see that on the bottom line. So there is that number. We've also got preliminary numbers, and this has not changed on the board, but under that first line item under reduced sales tax, we've received the preliminary sales tax number for the check that we're going to receive next week from the state, and we're up $200,000 for the month over our projections, which if we did the same calculation that we did to create that $56,000 number, the new calculation would bring that number down to $27,491.43, and that's over a 3-year period. So that would make our average $9,772,508 as opposed to $9,743,000. So so you can see there's some options there for the council if they wanted to adjust that number, and then other ideas there. So just thought I should point out to you where we stood today. So
Very good. Any questions? Mr. Henry.
I'd just like to make a comment, and this is just basically for the public hearing that we have Monday on the budget. I would urge the public to come out if they have any questions or concerns in regards to this year's budget. I think this is a pretty important process, and obviously we would like to hear from the public in regard to any thoughts or feelings that they may have on certain items within the budget. So with that, please come out, and if you have any concerns, because typically what happens is with some of those public hearings, we don't get many people to come out, and I would urge the public to come out and voice any concerns or questions that they may have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Anyone else? Ready?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.